You're listening to the Brian Keane Fitness Podcast, where Irish fitness entrepreneur Brian Keane answers your questions and interviews leaders in the world of fitness, health, mindset, and natural wellness to share tips about all things that can support you on your journey to becoming the best version of yourself and build a bulletproof mindset to get whatever you want out of life. Come join the fun.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Brian Keane Fitness Podcast. We talk everything fitness, nutrition and mindset to help you with your goals. Today's episode is going to be a Q&A. So I've pulled some questions from my Instagram, Brian Keane Fitness, and a couple from Snapchat, a few anonymous ones on there where people ask not to use their name because we get into some pretty heavy topics towards the end of the episode. So a little bit more lighthearted in the beginning, more fitness, a little bit of mindset stuff. Talking on fat burners, and then we go a little bit more heavy-handed as the episode goes on. So at some stage, hopefully I'll be able to timestamp these two so that you'll know exactly where to go to find each one. But I know a lot of people enjoy listening to it all the way through, so be sure to let me know. Do you like listening to the episode all the way through? Would you like to be able to jump straight into a specific question? So leave it on the reviews. I check that on iTunes, or you can hit me up on DM or on Snapchat and let me know what you think. We're constantly trying to improve the podcast as we're coming up to that million download number. All the feedback on what you'd like to hear, what would make it easier for you to navigate, all of these things. I'm not emotionally tied to anything that I do, so I'm always looking for any constructive criticism on what you want to hear, what topics you'd like covered, or how we could make it easier for you to navigate. So be sure to let me know, hit me up, and keep me posted. So we'll jump straight into today's Q&A. Massive thank you in advance for everyone who sent in the questions. I hope you're all back into the swing after the Christmas period and got a lot of value from the last few episodes. We talked on getting back into shape faster a couple of weeks ago with New Year's tips. So I know a lot of you have been applying that and doing those, and some of you have been doing the 7 a.m. workouts or the Monday morning workouts on Facebook Live as well. So hopefully that helped kickstart things and you're really rocking now into the third week of January. So first question comes in from Donna Adams X on Instagram. I'm currently in the middle of your book and your anxiety podcast was so helpful. Do you have any other mindset or philosophy book recommendations for a beginner? So massive thank you for reading. I know a lot of you that listen to the podcast have read my book, The Fitness Mindset. It is very feedback's been incredible on that. It's got over 359 5-star reviews on Amazon at the recording of this podcast. And it's been amazing and blown my mind how many people picked up that book, passed it on. The numbers were just crazy. So a massive thank you. And I'm so happy that you and everyone listening who's messaged or reviewed and let me know how much it's helped. The truth is, when I was writing that mindset section of the book, I was pulling from a lot of my favorite books and pulling from a lot of my favorite people who are strong on the mindset side, and then I was just trying to break it down so that it was more available to digest. Because what I find sometimes with mindset books and philosophy in particular, it's very hard to break it down. And I'm fortunate, my background, for those of you new to the podcast, I was a primary school teacher, and basically what you have to do there is break down complicated ideas, particularly with your older kids and the advanced gifted children you were working with, breaking down complex ideas into its simplest form. And I try to do that with the mindset section of the book with some pretty higher level mindset and philosophy style questions. But I have pulled them from some of my favorites. So I'll talk through my personal favorites and what ones I recommend looking into, and then other ones that are a little bit more abstract and harder to break the information down, but ones that I got a lot of benefit from personally. So the first one that I'd recommend to any beginner looking to improve their mindset is going to be Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. That was one of my favorite books for two reasons. I did a podcast episode in November of last year where I spoke on the top 5 books that have changed my life. Not necessarily my top 5 favorite books, but the ones that moved me from A to B, or moved me from A to C, or helped me break through a glass ceiling, and how my life changed as a result. And Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way was one of those books. More so because it introduced me to Stoic Philosophy, which is basically a thesis of everything that happens is the way you see it, and the way that it happens externally doesn't really matter, and it's your thought process and the story you put on it that matters. So the whole idea of Stoic philosophy is nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so, and that we control every thought that we have, we control every emotion that we feel, and we can decide to let that emotion overcome us, or we can decide to let that story have legs and build, and then, you know, we'll keep telling ourselves we're not good enough, or we keep telling ourselves that this is a limitation, or that we can't do something. And Stoic philosophy is that it doesn't matter what is happening in the outside world, or the negative comments coming back at you externally from other people, your family members, friends, society. It's how you see those words and how you choose to use them that's very, very important. And Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way is exactly as the book sounds. It's talking about using obstacles as stepping stones to get to where you want to faster. And as much as I love that book, it introduced me into Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, who's a former emperor of Rome, and Seneca, who is, again, another Roman philosopher that is known for his thought processes on dealing with external things that are perceived as negative and reframing it that there's nothing good or bad and your thoughts control it. So the introduction to Stoic philosophy was why that book helped me so much. But it's very, very hard to digest those words from Seneca, from Marcus Aurelius, because they were written 2,000 years ago. So the English is hard to digest. Whereas Ryan Holiday broke down a lot of those ideas into modern day English, and uses modern day examples to back up the ideas from, you know, the ancient Stoics. So that was one of my favorite books for philosophy and mindset in general, because it made me see all the bad things, quote unquote bad things, that happened to me in my life as a stepping stone to something better. All the terrible relationships I was in, all the stupid business decisions I made, all the terrible workout or nutrition advice that I'd been given and followed, made me realize that it was all a stepping stone to getting something better. Every bad relationship made me a stronger version coming out, so that you can show up in the next one as a stronger version of you. Every bad business decision led to a failure that you were able to fix going forward, and made my business stronger as a result. Every nutrition and training mistake that I made, from silly injuries or making myself sick with terrible food choices, was a direct feedback on a way that wasn't working, and I was able to adapt it and move forward. And as a result, now I have a very fortunate to have a thriving business, a body and physique that gives me energy through the day so I can do all the things that I want to do, and relationships in my life, particularly my family and closest friends, that I wouldn't trade for anything in this planet or in this world. And a lot of that came from struggles. I use the example in my book that one of the changing points for me, or turning points for me, over the last 3 or 4 years, and I'll use myself because your own best example, was I had a friend who quote unquote friend, who I heard was speaking very, very badly about me when I wasn't around. And it made me very, very conscious of the kind of people that I wanted in my life. And again, it was very easy to look and go, oh, fuck him, you know, he's talking badly about him, I'm going to talk badly about him. He was talking badly about me, I'll talk badly about him, and then nothing gets solved, nothing gets done. But when you go into that conflict and realize that when he was speaking to me, I'm like, look, I don't want to talk to you anymore, I don't want to be friends, I heard you're speaking negatively about me, and I don't want to be around that kind of person. And that was very, very difficult for me to accept at the time. But as a result, 3-4 years later on now to present day, I have an incredible network of people around me, because I know exactly what I want, and more importantly, I know what I don't want. I love the Charlie Munger quote that if I knew where I was going to die, I just wouldn't go there. And it's the same thing with friendships, with relationships. If you know the things you don't want, it makes it significantly easier that you avoid those types of things. So if you're looking for a boyfriend or a girlfriend and you've had 6 terrible relationships where someone has cheated on you, or they shut down completely and they wouldn't talk to you about anything, you know that that's not the kind of person that you want to be with, and you have that direct feedback moving into the next relationship so that you can get what you want, and you're using those obstacles as the way. And that changed my entire thought process, that all the quote-unquote bad things or negative things have made me a stronger version of who I am, and all failure is, all Obstacles are the way you see it and the way that you decide and what emotion you decide to attach to it. You can see it as a complete breakdown that, well, that shows that, you know, I'll never be in a relationship, or that business idea will never work, or I'll never be in shape, I'll never get a six-pack, or I'll never lose, you know, 3 dress sizes. Or you can reframe it and go, well, that's just one more way that doesn't work, so I can tick that off. I love the Thomas Edison quote that he says, I didn't fail 10,000 times when I was trying to create the light bulb. I just found 9,999 ways it didn't work. That's using obstacles and using failures as feedback so that you can move forward. And at the end of the day, if you know, I love the Chinese proverb that you fall down 8 times, you get up 9. Using failure, using obstacles as feedback, reframe it, and then move forward so you can have everything you want in your life. It's just a matter of choosing to see it another way. And Ryan Holiday's books, Stoic Philosophy books, have massively supported me, and it was a large influence on the mindset section of my book on choosing to see things and everything that happens to you as whatever attachment or emotion that you tie to it, and that's down to your choice. The next book then is one that I read pretty recently in the last 6 months, and I've been recommending it a lot on my Snapchat, on BrianK019 on my Snapchat, because it's one that I didn't expect to get as much from, but had heard so many positive things from people I respected that I decided to give it a read, and that's Carol Dweck's Mindset. And again, it has one of those titles and subtitles. I can't remember the subtitle at the minute, but it's one of those that I was like, oh, I'm not going reading that. It's going to be another secret, which again, I didn't get a lot from Rhonda Byrne's Secret. It's not a knock on the book. It just didn't support me in any way, but a lot of people have. And I thought Mindset by Carol Dweck was going to be very, very similar. But actually, as I read it, it made me realize that the whole idea of that book is she's talking about people who are open-minded and people who are closed-minded. Open-minded people have this constant ability to take feedback and choose to learn from every situation that happens to them, good and bad. And closed-minded people tend to have their own way that they see the world, and nothing can change that. And I always had that kind of belief system, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years. But what I didn't realize, and what Carol Dweck gets into in the Mindset book, is that you can be super open-minded in one area of life and really closed off in another area. And it started to show up for me, and the best books normally mirror back on you, or it lands with you, or a light bulb goes off within you for some reason because you needed to hear that message at that moment in time. And for me, I was super open-minded in my business. It's probably one of the reasons that I've been able to go from social welfare to serving and having thousands of people come through my program, a best-selling book, #1 podcast, all of these things in the space of 4 years, is down to that I'm super open-minded in my business and helping people in any way that I can, and I'm not tied emotionally or in any way to how I do that. Like, one of my principles that I live by is the key to hitting a goal, or the key to long-term success, whatever that looks like for you, is knowing what the end target is and then not being attached to how you get there. And that goes for business, that goes for your fitness, that goes for your life, your relationships, your job. Whatever the end goal is, if you know what that is, you can't hit a target you can't see. So knowing what that end goal is and then not being attached to how you get there is the key to hitting any target, regardless of how big. And I thought that I was just open-minded. But what happened was, in certain relationships, in certain situations, I realized that I was super closed-minded in other areas. And I've spoken in other podcasts, particularly when I've been featured as guests, and I've spoken a little bit on my channel about that my weakness area in my life has always been romantic relationships with other people. It's one of those, when you have that Superman complex that a lot of type A personalities have, where you think you can do it all and you're a little bit of a control freak because the amount of effort you put in normally rewards. Like, if you put the hard work and effort in most areas of life, you tend to see the reward back. But in a romantic relationship, you don't see that, because your 100% is only 50% because there's 2 of you. And it's always been a weakness area of mine. It's one that I've massively tried to embrace new ideas, read new books, consume different information that changed that mindset that I have. And Carol Dweck's book was one of those that really opened me to realize that I was closed off to a lot of ideas in terms of my mind wasn't open to how you show up in a relationship with somebody. It wasn't open to, well, you know, you might meet a romantic partner sporadically, you can't necessarily plan for it, and you can't force it just because you feel that you've got the time and you may be able to get into a relationship right now, which is where the stories that I had told myself, I would literally go from relationship to relationship when I had blocks of time where I wasn't busy, and then as soon as I got busy again, I would end that relationship. And it made me realize that I was super closed-minded in that area of my life, and I didn't realize because I thought that when you were open-minded in all areas. You were open-minded to business, you were open-minded to fitness, you were open-minded to relationships, and you were just open-minded. But Carol Dweck's book made me realize that you can be super open-minded in one area and you can be really closed-minded in another, and it's very, very important to be able to distinguish which you are in what area of your life, because when you realize something and the light bulb goes off, when you can take ownership of it and realize that I actually do that. When you take ownership, you can control it, and when you control it, you can change it. And it allows you to consume new information. Your thoughts become things. The thoughts you have in your head lead to the actions that you take, and the actions you take dictate the entire direction of your life. So if you're not happy in some area of your life, in a relationship, in business, in life, in your finances, it's go back to the source. It's the thoughts you're putting into your head, because they're dictating the actions you take, and all the actions you take are literally the manifestation and the creation of the life that you have right now. Every thought you've ever had, everything you have in your life right now started with a thought that you planted in your head. So start planting things that are going to support you, consuming the right information, the right podcast, following the right people that are making you become a stronger version of yourself, you know. And when you do that, it's very, very easy to start bridging those gaps between the things you don't know and the things you don't know, because it's not what we don't know that kills us, because you can look up what you don't know. It's the things you don't know. So if you don't know, I didn't know that I was closed-minded in relationships until 6-7 months ago when I consumed that book, and it made me realize that I had a gap here that I couldn't see. And when you bring that to the forefront, you can take ownership of it and realize that this is all on me. Every time I've ever felt this way or handled a situation this way, that was down to me. And when you own it, you can control it. And when you can control it, you can change it, and then you can move forward. So in terms of mindset and philosophy, they are probably the two that have really supported and helped me. There's loads of other good ones. Jack Canfield's 20 Success Principles is a great one. Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. But if I had to put my name to two recommendations for beginners, it would probably be The Obstacle is the Way and Carol Dweck's Mindset. Okay, next question comes in from Granty18 on Instagram. I'm juggling a newborn, career, training in college. Any tips? So I've talked about this on a couple of my vlogs. I know a lot of you are watching my vlogs on YouTube that we started probably about 2 months ago now. And I've spoken in the past that it's very important to understand what your priorities are, because one of the things that I refuse to say, or the story I tell myself, and I've given my first network of people full permission to pull me on this if I ever say it, is I'm not allowed to say I don't have time, because you do have time. Everybody has the exact same 24 hours in a day. You're not making the things a priority. Now, you may not have the energy, because they're two different things. And this is something that I got very, very confused on, particularly when I started my business first, was not having time to do something and not having the energy. Because if you're tired, like you have 24 hours in a day and you come home after 8 hours, you're looking after the kids and you're wrecked, and then you've got a 2-hour window before bed, but you sit down and watch TV or Netflix because you're tired. That's energy. That's not having time. That's not having the energy. That's why it's so important to get your nutrition right, and it's why one of the, even in my book, The Fitness Mindset, that subtitle is Eat for Energy, because you can change your body composition and you can train harder if you have enough energy, and you can prep your meals and do all these other things, show up better in your relationships, show up better at work to help more people when you have the energy. It's not a time thing. So newborn, career, training, and college, you got to get very, very good at breaking down your day and prioritizing the things that are important, and then feeding your body with nutritious foods and getting quality sleep so that you're able to keep your energy high. One of the questions that came up on my podcast recently, I think it was last month in December, somebody was asking me about sleep, asking do I sleep, and it's one of my, I'm actually like super, super strict on getting a quality night's sleep every night. I put a section of that in the book about my 7.5 hour window that I always try and get. You go into 90-minute REM cycles, which is your rapid eye movement sleep cycles. It's where you are basically downloading and processing the information from the day, and that waking up midway through a REM cycle can make you wake up groggy, and then you reach for something stimulant or sugary to try and get your energy levels up. So I try and sleep in 90-minute cycles. So either it's 6 hours, 7.5 hours, or 9 hours, so I'm not waking up groggy. That in combination with eating quality foods. I don't eat any processed food. I'll try and avoid processed ingredients as much as I can, and I'll stick with clean, quality, high whole foods as much as physically possible. It changes a bit when I travel, but when I'm home, I try and stick to vegetables, fruits, clean meats, fish, complex carbohydrates, and healthy fats as much as physically possible. And that keeps my energy up during the day so that I can get more things done. When you have a newborn, a career, training, or college, and just someone looking that is juggling a lot of different things, it's very important that, one, you're getting your rest, so you're getting your quality sleep. Find out how much you need. You may not need 7.5 hours. You may not need 9 hours. You may function perfectly well on 6 hours every night. So experiment with that. You may find that spacing your meals, I personally like spacing my meals every 2.5, 3 hours. I like breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks in between because that keeps my blood sugars levels stable. So it means my energy is constant through the day. So I use that to hack my energy levels through the day so I can be more productive. So for example, I was chatting to a girl recently on a Snapchat Q&A who was studying a master's and lecturing part-time, and she gave up training, and as a result her anxiety got really bad because she wasn't getting that stress relief from workouts. And we broke down her day. So for example, if you've got 8 hours sleeping, you've got 8 hours working on her master's, which is what we told her, that's 16 hours you've used. You've got another 2 hours to train. You've got another 2 hours to commute, where you're going an hour to and from work. That leaves you with 4 hours left at the end of the day, to 2 hours to lecture each day, and then 2 hours of free time to hang out with your friends. Break down your day into what's the most important for you. You know, you can factor in training. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour workout. You may have a 20-minute HIIT session that you do. You may find when you're working with a newborn or working full-time and having a newborn that you've got to be a little bit more loose with how you break up your day in terms of the time, but the same principle applies. 24 hours laid out, write it down. It just means you're not spending time doing stupid shit like fucking wasting hours watching stupid stuff on TV that's not helping you. By all means, factor that in, but not on the days when you're really stressing out and feeling anxious about trying to juggle everything. So prioritize the important things, break it down, and again, it's the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? Bite by bite. You don't take massive tasks and all the things that we have to do on a daily basis and look at it as a whole. You break it into chunks. I did this exact same thing when I started training for the Marathon des Sables, which is the 256 kilometer race that I'm doing to the Sahara Desert next year. 256 kilometers is, for me, was mind-blowing, and I didn't even know how I was even going to attack it, and it was in the Sahara Desert, the hottest place, one of the hottest places on the planet, but I chunked it down. I started by doing 2-kilometer runs at the end of my workouts, then I built it up to 3, then I went to 5, then I went to 10, and now I'm running 50, 100, 150 kilometers a week, depending on the week. And you break it down, you chunk it down, and then you start working with the most important things. And every massive, gigantic task that you have, when you break it into smaller steps, becomes a lot more achievable. And anybody, Lord, I love what Tony Robbins says, that success leaves clues. When you talk to successful people or read their books or their biographies and consume their information, you see that they do the same thing. The billionaires chunk it down. How to make €1 million, you chunk it into 4 quarters, then you chunk it into months, you chunk it into weeks, and you figure out what you have to earn a day. You want to earn 100 grand a year or 120 grand, you break it down. What do you need to earn a month? What do you need to earn a week? What do you need to earn a day? If you need to earn €356 a day, you need to find a way that you can scale up and make money on the side if you're working 9 to 5. And that's how you hit your 6 figures, or that's how you hit whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Break it down into smaller tasks and everything becomes more achievable. Okay, next question comes in from William Malone 1 on Instagram. What do you think of fat burners? Are they harmful or helpful? I have a pretty strong opinion on fat burners, even though I can argue both sides as well. I love the Charlie Munger quote. Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's business partner. They own Berkshire Hathaway, who own Coca-Cola. They're two of the richest people in the world. And he says that you should never argue an opinion on anything unless you can argue the opposite side better than the people who hold that opinion. That's kind of how I feel about fat burners. I can argue why they're super helpful, and I can argue why they're super harmful. So what I'll do is I'll try and give you a little bit of context on both, and then it's largely going to be down to your decision whether you use them or not. In terms of being super helpful, they definitely help speed up fat loss progress if your nutrition and training isn't on point. I think it's nearly impossible to dispute otherwise. If you're in a calorie deficit and you have a good training program, they can 100% enhance your body's ability to burn fat faster. Different fat burners have different ingredients, so depending on when people talk fat burners, I generally think over-the-counter fat burners that you can buy that are a combination or an amalgamation of different ingredients that all promote fat burning. So they normally have some form of appetite suppressant in there, which means that you won't be as hungry. They normally have a high level of stimulants, so caffeine and other stimulants, so that you've got energy through the day even though you're not consuming that many calories. And then other ones will have some form of thermogenic effect, so you'll just be burning more calories throughout the day. And because of all these effects on the body and their ability to speed up fat loss, it's kind of like what goes up must come down. And when you use something, appetite suppressors particularly, because a lot of really potent and well-marketed fat burners will have a high level of appetite suppressants in there. So it basically means that you're not going to be hungry during the day and you get what I call fake energy. It's where you have stimulants in your body and you don't really need food to get energy. So you can train, you can go do your cardio, and you don't need that much food to do it. So and by all logic, you don't eat a lot of food and you're training, you're going to lose fat. You're going to lose body weight. You'll lose weight. Again, weight and body fat are not the same thing. Weight is a number on a scale. Body fat is the fat on your body. But you'll lose body fat with fat burners, particularly the ones that suppress your appetite. But where my issue with them is the harmful effects of anything that's that potent will reverse out the other side. It's kind of like when you pull back an elastic band, and the further you pull it back, which is the fat burner suppressing your appetite and giving you energy, and you let go, it can rebound you out the other side and you end up worse than when you started. Because if you had a massive appetite suppressing fat burner that is having a strong effect on your body and you're getting a lot of energy and you've not had to consume food for that energy, when you stop taking that fat burner, the complete opposite happens. You end up needing way more food than normal to get energy, and your appetite can skyrocket. You can also downregulate your hormones like leptin and ghrelin. They're your hunger and satiation hormones, basically the hormones in your body that say I'm full or say that I'm hungry. Juice diets and bar diets and massively calorie restricted diets can also downregulate those hormones, but fat burners can do it too. So that is the thing you need to watch out for when you decide to take a fat burner. It's also worth noting that you can't take a fat burner and sit on the couch. Otherwise, it just becomes a super expensive cup of coffee. Because it won't work. Like, you need to make sure your nutrition is good, you're in a calorie deficit, and that you're training to get maximum results from it. But on the harmful side, I also am not a fan of anything that has a direct effect on your central nervous system and sympathetic nervous system that is going to put you into a constant state of fight or flight. And that's what fat burners do. When you're in a state of fight or flight, which is just an evolutionary process that your body has, fight, flee. But when you go into fight or flight, your body has that increase of cortisol, which is your stress hormone that starts to circulate through your body and puts you into a kind of heightened state of alertness. So it means you're not hungry and you don't need food, but there's a lot of different side effects that can come from that. That's perfectly fine in short bursts. We go into fight or flight in a little bit when we train, and we get cortisol coming through our body. In short bursts, it can be very, very beneficial, but long chronic terms or chronic states of fight or flight can be very, very harmful for the body in terms of you're not able to unwind. for one, which means that it can really negatively affect your sleep, and you can't drop into your REM sleep, or you can't get a deep quality sleep, so you end up waking up tired and needing more stimulants on top of the fat burners to stay awake, and you get all these other issues with anxiety and stress that can really have a negative effect on your actual way you feel mentally. Also, depending on your tolerance level for stimulants and caffeine, fat burners can make people super jittery and anxious. I remember I used to take them when I used to compete and I was traveling as a fitness model. I actually was very, very over-reliant on fat burners. It's why I can give a very, very honest feedback on how they feel and tell you that they do 100%, they do work. But my mindset, I was always edgy and jittery, and always felt people were talking about me, or all these weird stories I was telling myself just from being in a constant state of alertness from the fat burners I was taking. I was taking really, really potent ones, and being aware that it can have a very negative effect on your mental health, and then understanding that if you come off them, there's a potential rebound that occurs, which can be very, very difficult to look at from a body conscious image. That if you go from being a certain level of body fat and feeling really lean and sexy and good in your clothes, and then you go back worse than when you started, that can take its toll on you psychologically from a body dysmorphia or a body conscious side. So be aware of that. And one of the things that I generally talk to people is, unless you're a competitor, a bodybuilder, men's physique, bikini girl, I would probably not use an over-the-counter fat burner. By all means, use things like green tea extract, L-carnitine tartrate, and these ones that will support your health as well as help you lose body fat. But extra potent fat burners, unless you're trying to get to that sub number level of body fat and you need to be ready by a certain date so you can step on stage, there's so many other ways to get your body fat down. Changing up your program, getting into a deficit, cycling out your carbs, working through your nutrition and your training can get your body fat down, and it means doesn't take that much effort to get it down. The analogy that I normally use for reducing body fat is like pushing a tire up a hill. You know, if you're pushing a big tire up a hill, it takes a lot of effort in the beginning, building the right habits, finding the foods that work for you, finding the right training program. But when you get to the top of the hill, it's way easier to hold it there because you've already built the habits in place to keep you there. You know what foods work for your body, you know how your body responds to certain training stimuluses and programs, and then you just factor that in. And so personally, I'm not a fan, but I'm not going to say do or don't use them. I'm more going to try and provide, and hopefully I've provided some information on how they can be harmful and how they can be helpful, and then you can make the decision based out of what I've said, and hopefully that helps you making a decision one way or the other. Okay, next question is an anonymous one from Snapchat. I've lost my way in life. I don't even have the energy to go to the gym anymore. What should I do? So I've done a couple of podcasts similar to having been asked this question in the past. So I've done a how to find your life purpose episode, which is one of my most downloaded episodes. And also my advice I'd offer my 18-year-old self is also a very, very highly downloaded episode where I talk about my period in my life when I felt really lost. And the truth is, what I found has helped me during those periods, and I was super lost from probably until the age of 25, that 23 to 25 period, I felt like I was just walking around like a zombie. I had qualified as a primary school teacher. I went into that profession and realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do, and there was this constant sense of the only word I can describe is incompleteness, that I would walk around day to day, and for me I was numbing out. I was going out getting drink, I was using drugs, I was using all sorts of other shit trying to fucking numb the feeling because I wasn't happy with what my life was. And generally people will find a way to either numb out or disconnect from reality when you're not happy with where your life is going. I did it for 2 years until I got a little bit of self-awareness to realize that I can either change this now or I can continue down this path and see what happens and see where my life goes. I spoke a lot about that in the mindset section of my book. And the truth is, a lot of fulfillment in life, I break my life into 4 quadrants. I spoke on this in another podcast episode. I break my life into health, wealth, love, and fulfillment into 4 quadrants, and then I scale it and mark it 1 out of 10 every quarter, and then I evaluate where I've gone down or where I've gone up and what I can do to improve. And my fulfillment section is now at about a 9, and it fluctuates between an 8 and a 10 depending on the time of the year and depending on what I'm doing. And that was at about a 4, where I just didn't feel fulfilled. And I think it dropped to a 2 at one stage, where I was like, there's no reason for me to even be on this planet. I'm not helping anybody. I'm not making the world any better. I'm not really doing anything. I'm just surviving. You know, it was the high end of just going through life like a zombie. And I've spoken in the past that I was one of those people that was going to be dead by 25 but not buried until I was 80. And a lot of life's purpose and fulfillment can come from when you understand that what you have to offer the world, when that merges with what the world needs, fulfillment comes as a result. And one of the biggest issues people have is they sometimes feel resistance off that and tell themselves a story that, well, I have nothing to offer the world. And that resistance and that story is all that is. It's a fucking story you're telling yourself. Because, and you're right, because if you tell yourself you've nothing to offer the world, then you're 100% right. Confucius said, he who says he can and he who says he can't are both usually right. And if you convince yourself and keep backing up that story and giving more legs to that table that you've nothing to offer, then you're fucking right, you've nothing to offer. But when you change it, and when you, the book that I mentioned earlier, Carol Dweck Mindset, when you open your mind to the possibility that there's something you can help somebody with, and when you start doing that, you start making the world a better place, and fulfillment comes as a result. If you've never done anything but get up off the couch, and you've never gone to the gym, you've never done any exercise, but you've taken that first step off the couch, you can still help the person on the fucking couch. Everybody can do that. The scale is different depending on the person, depending on the belief system, depending on what makes you happy. But everybody can help somebody. This is why people get such fulfillment with children. It's why they get such fulfillment with mentoring and helping people, working back with youth clubs or youths and helping mold them and making their life better. And it gives you that feeling of, I need to be here because I'm helping this person. You need to find out what that is for you. And again, it's relative. For you, it might be with your kids. It might be with your cousins. It might be with some kids that you're volunteering, working with. It might be something completely different. You might write a blog or start a podcast or write a book or do something that helps somebody else. You may be just helping that person on the couch who still can't get up off it. That person that is 2 years past where you're feeling now, where you have no drive in life and you don't feel like it's going anywhere. There's somebody who's 2 years on from you. You can fucking help them because they're in a worse situation than you. There's 7 billion people on this planet. And unless you're fucking number 7 billion and you got it worse than everybody else, like you don't have a house, you don't have food, you don't have any money, you're sleeping on the street, and you have it the worst out of the 7 billion people, you can fucking complain. Then maybe you can't help somebody, but every other fucking person can. You just got to figure out what it is you have to offer. You know, what is it? What talents have you got, or what personality traits have you got that can support and help somebody else? Relative. Doesn't need to be 1,000 people. Doesn't need to be the rest of the world. It might be that one person. But find that one fucking person you could help and then start building your spare time and your life around being around that person and making their life better. You know, I love the Mother Teresa quote that if we just swept our own front floor or swept our own front door, the whole world would be clean. And sometimes all you have to do is look after yourself and the people that are around you, and you can make the world better as a result. It doesn't have to be huge, it doesn't have to be massive, it doesn't have to be helping 1,000 people. It might be that one kid that you talk to, it might be that one person in your life that you can help and support. Find who that is, and if you struggle to realize that you don't have anything to offer and you tell yourself that story, then by all means, there's nothing you can do about that, because he who says he can and he who says he can't are both usually right. So next question. A guy I'm texting wants me to send him nude photos. I'm not sure if I should. What if anyone else sees them? But I'm afraid he won't text me back if I don't do it. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure of this girl's situation or age, but I wanted to answer this question because it came in a couple of different forms across different platforms, and I'm going to break it into 2 parts because I'm going to talk on the practical and logical, and then I'll talk in my own emotional feeling to it. The practical and the logical is understanding that everything that you ever post or send online is out there and available for other people to potentially see. So you've got to be very, very aware that anything that you put out there or send to somebody will always have a chance of coming back on you at some stage. So it's 2018 now. it's the world we're living in. So before I go into any advice that I'm going to offer, be aware that everything you post, everything that you send may be available for other people to say. And a Snapchat and mediums that disappear can still be screenshotted and can circulate the web. That's just a law and a reality that is an issue right now. So I'm not saying do or do not send nude photos. I know people in relationships do it. Sometimes people will do it if they're trying to hook up with somebody. By all means, make your own decision. But from a practical standpoint, understand that what you put out there, what you put online, what you post, what you send is available for other people outside of the person you're sending it to see. That's the way the internet works. So from a practical standpoint, understanding that before I even offer advice on this one is also important to understand. Okay, so to offer advice on this question, as I said, I don't know the context, I don't know the girl's age, I don't know the situation, but what I will say is straight away, sending a nude photo to a guy that you're into, you need to understand that that photo may not just go to him. I don't know the age, I don't know the group, I don't know more of the situation, but you've got to be aware that if he's in a room with 3 or 4 of his mates, he may show his friends, you know, and by all means, I love the Richard Feynman quote, don't fool yourself when you're the easiest person to fool. You can send a photo and convince yourself that it's just him, but it might not be. So you need to be prepared that if that's what you're going to do, that other people may see it. If you're okay with that, by all means, go for it. If you don't care, then that's not going to be an issue. But what I will say is if you're making decisions based out of, I'm afraid he won't text me back if I don't send them, and he's a guy that doesn't text you back because you don't send them, that is a direct feedback that that is not the kind of person that you want to be involved with. You know, it's one sign that he's either not interested in you or he's a fucking dick that is trying to manipulate you in some way, shape, or form. So you've got to be very, very careful that you're not making a decision based out of fear that he won't text you back. If anything, that's normally a direct feedback that he's not the person you want to be with, and you can thank your lucky stars that that came up so that you can move on to somebody who's going to support you and be more suited to what it is that you're looking for. Now, by all means, there's a couple of ways to answer this. Like, people will do it and don't have an emotional attachment. You can send nude photos to somebody you're seeing or in a relationship, and again, each to their own, it's each person's decision and everyone can make it themselves. But in this context where you're afraid somebody won't text you back if you don't send them, that is a fucking red flag for me straight away, that you need to make the decision and realize that if that's the kind of person that you're talking to or texting or involved with, and he won't reply to you or message you back because you don't send him new photos, you can thank yourself lucky that that's great feedback to get that it's time to move on to somebody else. I've spoken on the podcast in the past, I have no issues or ties with hookups or one night stands or nude photos. By all means, go do whatever makes you happy. But when you tie your self-worth to these external things and they're making you question who you are and making you question your happiness and your self-worth and what opinion you hold of yourself, then you got to shut that shit down. You know, by all means, go out and have your one night stands, go out and have your hookups, send your nude photos, but don't be tied to the self-worth of somebody not replying or not messaging and not showing up the way you want them to show up, and you being manipulated into doing what they say just because you want a boyfriend or you want a girlfriend or you want somebody else to, you know, think that you're important or special. Don't let your self-worth be tied to it. Make your decisions out of something external. You know, if you want to send your nude photos, send your nude photos, but be aware that other people may see it. It may go online, and it also not the kind of person that doesn't reply to that is probably a direct feedback in the context of this answer and this situation, that that kind of person is not the person that you want to be involved with long term in a relationship. And by all means, you may find that you don't send the photos and you end up getting on and connecting and you end up building a relationship as a result. That could happen, but don't let sending nude photos be the determinant of whether this guy continues to text you back, and don't make your decision based off that. Okay, so that's the end of today's episode. Really random bunch of questions today, so I hope you got a lot of value. This one was a little bit longer than normal just because I was able to flesh out a couple of the questions, so I hope you enjoyed me being able to give a little bit more context. But again, hit me up and let me know, do you prefer shorter form? Do you like when I expand out these slightly longer episodes? Hit me up on DM, hit me up on Snapchat, on our DM on Instagram, Snapchat, BrianK019. Let me know what you think. So I hope you got a lot of value. As I said, a lot of different topics covered in today's episode. So for more on me, You can check out my website on briankeenfitness.com. My Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram is all Brian Keane Fitness. My Snapchat's BrianK019. My book, The Fitness Mindset, is available on Amazon and the Book Depository online and all Dewberry bookstores in Ireland. Massive thank you for listening. Catch you all next week.